Here's a man who has seen the internet from every angle, as a lawyer, as a lobbyist, as a Google executive, as a Mozilla fellow, as an entrepreneur. And what did 30 years at the center of power teach him? That the web needs to be rewoven from the ground up with trust built in. Glianet, the Glia Foundation. Net Fiduciaries, a book that landed in 2024 like a quiet manifesto for the internet we deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Whitt.
Hey folks, great to be here. Thank you. We've already heard some amazing conversation this afternoon about decentralized technologies from Rafi, just from Drummond, before that Ben. And I'm here to tell you that's amazing work, but there's one missing layer. And I'm hoping to convince you in the next few minutes what that layer is, and more importantly, how we can get there. It's the fiduciary governance infrastructure, as I call it. So I did spend about 12 years at Google, started in the public policy team in DC. When I left in 2018, I was dissatisfied with the direction the company was taking, but not just Google, right? All of their brethren in the big tech world. I went to the Mozilla Foundation for 3.5 years as a fellow, and I developed this thing called Glianet. So Glia is the ancient Greek word for glue. And I chose it for 3 reasons. One is this idea that trust is the social glue that binds us together as individuals, as communities, as marketplaces, as political systems. That trust, obviously, over many years has been eroding away for many reasons. As I say, the web didn't start it, but it certainly has helped exacerbate it. So how do we create greater trust in the systems that we are embedded in every day? Second is the credo from Spider-Man, one of my favorite Marvel heroes. With great power comes great responsibility. And in the web today, and now we're seeing it in the big AI context as well, that trust, the notion that that sort of joining of power and responsibility has come asunder. So we now have enormous amounts of power, more or less unhindered, not just by laws and regulations, but even basic senses of ethics and duty and decency. And the third is the glial network in the brain. So in the late 19th century, when they first did graphs of the brain, they could see the neural networks. They were moving very quickly, the electrical charges going back and forth. They saw this stuff in the middle, which they thought was inert matter, didn't do anything. They said, well, this must be the stuff that glues the neurons together. As it turns out, these were the glial cells, glial networks. They operated on chemicals, not electrical signals. And because of that, people couldn't actually see it in the graphs. We've now come to realize in the last several decades in particular from the neuroscience world that glial networks do an enormous amount of work to protect, promote, and enhance the operation of the neural networks. So I live in Silicon Valley, been there for 11 years now. I like to say you see neural networks everywhere when you go to dinner parties and have conversations. Not a whole lot of glial networks, right? The basic support systems that every human being should have as part of their interactions on the web. So this was part of my guiding thinking around why we needed something different. Turned into a book, came out about 1.5 years ago called Reweaving the Web. And now this Glianet Alliance that I started, which is 25 member companies, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So this is an alliance, a nonprofit wrapped around for-profit, mostly smaller seed companies who want to essentially do the right thing, but also be commercially successful. So it goes both ways in terms of ethical elements that are embedded into business models. In the book, I talk about the prevailing economic of the web, the paradigm, which is what I call SEAMS. A lot of this comes from Shoshana Zuboff in her Surveillance Capitalism book, well documented. We know what this all talks about in terms of surveillance, extraction, analysis, and now manipulation increasingly coming at us from the AI algorithms that are much more advanced than they were just a couple of years ago. So I talk about this different paradigm, what I call HACS, human autonomy and agency via computational systems. And that we need to figure out how to take the technology and the governance and put them together in ways that put people in control. What I see here is what I'm calling the edge-based gap in AI governance. So we have sort of the supply side saturation coming at us from what was the big tech companies, increasingly big AI companies. And that governance field is dominated by notions of trust, of safety, right, of safeguards, of transparency, of accountability. It's essentially, as I say, how do you make the big guys hurt me less today than they did yesterday, and maybe hurt me a bit less tomorrow than they do today? It's hugely important work, but it is incomplete because it's focused on just one side of the platform. Another way to think about it here is the AI governance landscape. So if you look at the technology layer at the bottom, governance layer at the top, the platforms are occupying the left side. what I call the edge side, basically all of us, or on the right side. So the platform technology, no great surprise, the big names are down there at the bottom. At the top, as I mentioned, it's the fights over things like the EU AI Act and maybe some of the the AI acts that are being developed now in a few of the states in the US. It's trust and safety teams that are formed with great applause and then quietly disbanded, right? These are the efforts to attempt to constrain the technology companies in the lower left quadrant. Then you shift over to the right side. Again, amazing technologies being built with all of you today, the technologists around the D-Web notions. Drummond just talked about the idea of the verifiable trust communities. Incredible stuff, right? Over and over, we're seeing open source communities developing the right thing. And yet, my concern here is what I call the Zuckerberg principle. If any of these technologies can be taken and bolted to the side of Meta, tomorrow it's no longer a piece of decentralized tech that empowers people. It's just a part of the big Meta superstructure that abides by the singular notion of surveillance, extraction, analysis, manipulation. So we are creating the tools that we would love to believe are in fact going to change the world, and I do fervently believe they can. But the thing that we're missing is what I consider the upper right corner, which is the governance. We need, in addition to the technology, we need a governance regime that ensures that technology is being deployed and developed and utilized in the right way. And so I think of that as what I call a nascent area that we haven't talked about enough. And my humble suggestion is what I'm doing at Glianet. Others are doing it too, but I believe this is a pretty unique opportunity to work together on building out what I call the fiduciary governance infrastructure. So what is this exactly? Well, as a lawyer, and I apologize in advance to many of you here in the room, I went back in 2018 and 2019 times frame when I was at Mozilla, trying to figure out what are the ways in the past that we have looked to different principles, laws, paradigms to constrain power. And over again, it coming from the common law, the answer was fiduciary principles.